All right, guys, we've got a lot to go over for tonight's homework, so get out your whisk and we'll get started. Today's topic is body sentences, transitions, and conclusions. And at the end of tonight's homework, you should know how to expand your body sentences, use transitions effectively, and start putting together a well-constructed conclusion. So basically, go ahead and take some notes down on your body sentences. We'll go ahead and call these tell me more sentences because you're expanding on the main idea. You're telling the reader more. Once you've identified what your main ideas are, you need to start thinking about how to expand those ideas. So you need to start providing the reader with some detail and support. You need to help them visualize or see a picture in their head. And you need to know that without these sentences, it's next to impossible to really produce a proficient piece of writing. So you can't just randomly state your main idea. You have to expand on it. So in your whisk, take notes on that, and then also go ahead and watch this short video and write down 3 things that this teacher mentions on how to write more descriptively.
Here's my goal, to offer you a quick and concrete explanation as to how you can add more descriptive language to your writing. Now, you've heard this phrase before, show, don't tell, but it can be very abstract. I want to break it down into concrete terms so that you know what that means. Here's an example of writing that does a lot of telling. It's not very exciting. Surfing is fun and exciting. I like it a lot. It is such a unique experience. I read descriptive writing like this and I'm not very happy because there isn't much description. There's too much telling or literal language stating exactly what the writer means. There's no imagery attached. In other words, where's the picture? Also, verb choice is probably the single most important aspect of descriptive language, and when you have to-be verbs, am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been, those should be red flags that you've got literal language and a chance to add more description. Think about your modifiers as well. Your adjectives and adverbs. These should be used sparingly in descriptive writing, and when used, they should be interesting, fun, exciting, and unique, or rather tired, overused, and again, don't have much imagery. Finally, consider the nouns. Good, concrete, specific nouns are needed, and in this case, we have surfing and experience as the most concrete, but the rest are rather general, vague pronouns. So, this writing is not very interesting. How do we improve it, though? I'll show you. Now this next example I find more interesting because it does a better job of showing versus telling. I popped out of the salty foam, my feet planted to the sticky board. My head felt like it would split apart, my smile was so big. I whooped. Now in this case, I'm describing surfing in a way that shows the reader the experience as opposed to tells him or her the experience in a literal way. Now I do have a to-be verb, and so I do have some literal language. My smile was so big, but that's not a bad thing. It's actually a blend of literal and descriptive language that makes for good writing. Now, remember the verb choice is the most important. Consider these: popped, planted, split, and whooped. All of these are juicy, vivid verbs because they have imagery attached. There's sight imagery, sound imagery, and even touch that are associated with those verbs, and that carries the notion of description. Also, when I use modifiers, adjectives, and adverbs, I'm going to do that sparingly, but I want them to have impact. Salty and sticky are much more unexpected and therefore more effective. Finally, considering my nouns. I want to use concrete, specific nouns and again have imagery associated with those. Foam, feet, board, and smile are more concrete. And so overall, this writing is much more interesting than my first example. In the last example, I'm going to show you how to add even more description. This last description of surfing makes me happiest because it's the most vivid and unique. I popped up, my feet gripping the tacky board. A grin wider than the horizon splashed across my face. A wild power from the ocean and from within me foamed up as I let out a long and loony whoop. Any English teacher in the world would say that this is showing, not telling. But again, why is that? It has to do with my verb choice. Popped, gripping, splashed, and foamed all have imagery attached, and a variety of imagery at that. Also, the grin is splashing across my face like water, and the sense of enjoyment is foaming up from within me as a wave rises from the ocean. I'm purposefully trying to add my own figurative language through my verb choice. Again, I'm looking at modifiers. Tacky, wild, long, and loony are unexpected and have a variety of imagery attached, not just sight images, but sound and touch as well. My nouns are concrete and specific and plentiful. Feet, board, grin, horizon, power, ocean, whoop. And I'm adding even more figurative language. The grin, I want to show how big that is. I compare it to the horizon. And my sense of enjoyment, that wild power, is rising from within me as the waves rise from the ocean. All of these come together then to take something that's very telling and literal and boring and making it much more interesting for the reader. If you focus on your verbs, consider your adjectives and adverbs. Think about the nouns that you choose and try to add some of your own figurative language. You're taking writing and making it more descriptive, or you're showing and not telling. And that will make any English teacher in the world very happy. And more importantly, any reader more interested in what you have to write.
All right, so let's look at some examples. I've given you this paragraph in your whisk, so I need to get a red marker and a highlighter. And I'd like for you to go through the following example as I read it to you and highlight the main ideas and underline the sentences that expand the main ideas, so the supporting details, in red. Though there are many special people in my life, my mother is my favorite. One reason I love her is that she spoils me rotten. I can always talk her into cooking my favorite tacos with mounds of shredded cheese. Mom also teaches me things that help me succeed in life. She reminds me to be polite and kind to others and to keep a smile on my face. Another reason my mom is great is that she is so nice to my friends. All the kids in our neighborhood love to hang out at my house. My mom talks to them and treats them special. She makes cookies, drives us places we need to go, and offers advice when asked. No doubt about it, my mom is the best. So if you need to pause the video to go back and highlight and underline, go ahead and do that, and then we'll check our answers. All right, so everything you see in yellow are the main ideas. Spoils me rotten, teaches me things to help me succeed in life, and nice to my friends. The sentences in the red are the supporting details and help the main ideas. And in your whisk, I want you to go ahead and create this kind of bridge and also write down in red the definition for transitions. Big ideas should be in order so it's easy for the reader to follow, and the transitions help you move from one big idea to the next. They need to be effective, natural sounding, and never distracting to the reader. And at this point in your education, you really need to be avoiding first, second, and third. There are alternatives to these. I will give you a word bank that we'll glue in our journal or we'll have in our writing reference pages, but you need to avoid these at all costs. So basic expectations for transitions, you need to move beyond first, second, and third and try to use more a variety of simple transitions. If you're going for mastery or a B, you're using a wider variety of transitions, and you're beginning to maybe rearrange those transitions within the sentence, moving them away from the front because they can be in the middle or even at the end and still work. And at the expert, I'm looking for all of the above. And maybe also starting to think about thoughtfully deleting a transition here or there. Sometimes a paragraph sounds even smoother if you don't use the first transition. But of course, you've got to understand the basics before you can get to that point and understanding when it sounds better. Again, you'll be getting a transition list for your journal if you get stuck. So I would like for you to practice this on your own. There is a word that's repeated in this paragraph, and I believe that it's on your whisk as well. If it's not, you can obviously pause the video and read this one. But there's a word that's repeated over and over, and it's not a usual transition word, but the way that it's being used in this paragraph signifies that you're going from one big idea to the next. So go ahead and read through this paragraph, pause the video and read, and then see if you can't find that repeated word that acts as a transition, and write it down in your whisk when you found it. Some basic things of what not to do in referencing to expanding your main ideas and using transitions. You know, sometimes it's easy for you to write down your main ideas, but it's harder to do that in a unique way. Most of the time it's too simple, boring, it often gets very repetitive. So something to think about. This particular paragraph example is considered proficient. It has everything that you need, but it's just not very unique. It's not going above and beyond proficient. So my favorite treat is ice cream. I like to eat it for dessert. It's really good. Sometimes in the summer, my dad takes me to Dairy Queen. The ice cream there is really good. When the ice cream truck comes down our street, I like to buy ice cream. It's really, really good. Ice cream makes a great snack anytime. So you're getting repetitive in the really good. Is there any way that you could be more descriptive and use better word choice? You're not expanding on the details. What do you mean your dad takes you to the Dairy Queen? Or can you say anything about the sound that an ice cream truck makes when it comes down your street? All of those things are little unique things that just add to a piece of writing and push it above and beyond. So try and be interesting, different, unusual. Get your own voice in there by being specific to you and making it something that's your own. So this is what I did to this paragraph to make it just that much better. And again, remember that sometimes the difference between proficient and higher quality of piece of writing is in the details. So here's what I did. When I think back on special treats, I think of ice cream. I grew up in a family where ice cream was a frequent dessert. It was most often served in a dish, but on special occasions, my mom bought sugar cones at the corner drugstore. On family holidays, we'd have a pie or a cake a la mode. I also have special memories of summer evening trips to the Dairy Queen in our town. Sometimes a long bike ride with my dad led to a chocolate-dipped soft-serve cone. I remember celebrating hard-fought victories with the stop at DQ with my teammates. The jingling of the ice cream truck also brings back memories that make me smile. I met my best friend playing at a summer playground, where we'd often enjoy a treat from the neighborhood ice cream man who stopped by each afternoon. It's a sound that still causes me to smile and look out the front door on a lazy summer day. I have precious memories of this special treat, ice cream. So hopefully you notice how the tell me more sentences really add ideas and voice to the writing. I'm thoughtfully placing my transitions or using my transitions. And of course, there's a great conclusion there. So let's move on and talk about concluding sentences. So basically a conclusion lets the reader know that your paragraph is over, your writing is complete. Most scoring rubrics always expect a really strong conclusion at the end. It needs to either summarize the info, it maybe will restate the topic but use different words, or sometimes it might even be a clincher that encourages your reader to reflect on the topic and take action. When you're doing a writing test and you can only come up with 2 really great sentences, make those be your first and your last. They really are that important. Some things not to do: you're never allowed to end a paragraph with these sentences. No, you know everything I wanted to tell you about, ... or this paragraph is about, or that's all I have to say about, or Mrs. Carter, I hope you like my paper, or sometimes the dreaded, the end. If you hand me a paper like that, I'm just going to give it back to you and make you redo it. So get it right the first time. Some ideas for something that signals a conclusion. Don't overuse these words. Think about variety, and I will give you a word bank for conclusion words as well. So don't stress out about that. As far as expectations, again, as far as proficient is concerned, maybe you're repeating some of the topic sentence or using a concluding word at the beginning. Mastery, though, you're pulling some keywords from the topic and deliberately repeating them in your conclusion but changing them around, or maybe even pulling those keywords and finding synonyms so it's not exactly the same. As an expert, maybe you're doing a thought-provoking question for the reader or something similar to the mastery, where you're pulling some key pieces, but maybe you're adding in figurative language or some really great word choice or some great complex internal punctuation. All of those are great expectations for conclusions. All right, you're finished with tonight's homework. That seemed like a lot. So you're now done after you've completely gone through and did your summary and your questions, so don't forget to do that. And hopefully you now know all the components of a paragraph. I'll see you tomorrow in class.